Hi and welcome to the Bare Basics. This lesson we're moving on from the introduction to the unit circle to having a look at how we read our unit circle, whether we know the angle that we're dealing with or whether we know the sine and cos value that we're dealing with. Okay, so let's begin with a quick reminder of what the unit circle is. Remember, it's a circle that has a radius of 1, i.e. 1 unit, and it is centered on the origin of our Cartesian plane. So as we trace around our circle from our point of 0 degrees, we've got our point of 1, 0 on the x-axis, going up to 90 degrees, we're at 0, 1, across to 180 where we're at negative 1, 0, and at 270 we are at 0, negative 1. Okay, let's have a quick look at how we read the unit circle when the angles are known. Now, we looked at this very briefly in the Intro to Unit Circle video. So here we go again. Okay, so here's our unit circle that we have looked at in our previous video. So a quick reminder for you. Let's say we have an angle of 270 degrees. So we start at our 0 line and we go around to 270, which means we put our whatever we're using to line up our angles. So in your case, it's most likely to be a paper clip. We put that at 270. What we're looking at doing is we get our sine value from our vertical height and our cos value from our horizontal. So in this case, when we're looking for our sine angle, because sine is our opposite side on our hypotenuse, now hypotenuse is 1, so therefore our opposite side to our angle will always be found by our vertical height. And if that's a bit confusing for you, go back and have a look at the video, which is Introduction to Unit Circle, because it's outlined quite clearly there. So for 270 degrees, our vertical height is actually negative 1. So sine of 270 degrees will be negative 1. Our cos value of 270 degrees, it hasn't moved left or right, so our cos value will actually be 0. Let's have a look at that on another angle, and we'll have a look at cos of, so we'll come up here, so we've got 135 degrees because we've got 90, 105, 120, 135. So we'll pop our marker up here and we're right on this point here. So you can see where it actually cuts our grid. So once again, our cos value is found by looking at our horizontal over our radius of 1. So this is our adjacent side to our angle because we've got our angle here, which is our right angle triangle is here. So our cos value of 135 degrees is found by this line here and this length along our x-axis. So our cos value of 135 degrees is negative 0.7 approximately, and our sine value would be the same, approximately, but this time it's positive, so it will be 0.7, and you can check those with your calculator. Now, one thing that we notice is some of our values are negative and some of our values are positive. And this becomes really important because it tells us which quadrant our angle is in, and that's what we'll look at next. How do we know what the angle is when we actually know what the ratio, that is sine or cos, the value for sine or cos is? Okay, so we know that we've got 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, we can tell what the value of, or whether sine and cos will be positive or negative in each. In our first quadrant, we have a positive value here and a positive value here. So both sine and cos are going to be positive in our first quadrant, and in fact tan will be as well. So we can say that all will be positive in our first quadrant. In our second quadrant, we have positive for sine. So sine will be positive. But our cos value will be negative because we have a negative over this side. In our third quadrant, neither sine or cos will be positive because we have a negative value for sine and a negative value for cos. But I can tell you that tan in this quadrant will be positive because tan is sine divided by cos, so a negative over a negative, negative divided by a negative gives us a positive. And in our fourth quadrant, we have a positive for cos, but we have a negative for sine. So in our fourth quadrant, we have cos is positive. So cos, all, sine, and tan. So you can think of it as cast is the quick way of remembering which will be positive in which quadrant. Now, this is really important because we know if you get a positive value for cos, for example, straight away we know that it must be in this half of our unit circle because cos is taken from the reading on the horizontal axis, and therefore anything over this side of our unit circle will be positive. So if you have a reading of, for example, we know that cos is a half, positive a half. What we do is we go along our x-axis and we find a half, and then we can go up and we can see that it is 60 degrees because we've got 15, 30, 45, 60. So your calculator will tell you that when cos is cos is a half, our angle will be 60 degrees. But there is a second answer, because we can not only read up from this value, but we can also read down, which means when cos is a half, we have two possible answers. We can go up to 60 degrees, or we could go down, so we have 60 degrees here, which means we can call that either negative 60 degrees because it's 60 degrees downwards from 0, or it's 360 degrees minus 60 degrees, which is 300 degrees. So it's really important to know that when you have any value for cos or sine, you will have two possible angles that have that answer or that value for that cos or that sine. Let's take, for example, if we had, we'll stick with the a half, if we had sine of negative a half. So what we do, I'll use a piece of paper, we go to negative a half and we put a line across. Now where our line hits the circumference of our circle, that will give us the angle. We then track that back to our origin, and that will give us the angle that tells us what that angle actually is. So we've got sine of negative a half. Now if I come to this side, I track that back to our origin. So if I start at 0 and come right around, that means I've got 180, 195. So this is 210 degrees. So the sine of 210 degrees is negative a half. On this side, I can either say that is minus 30 degrees, or I can say, by tracking it all the way around, it's 360 degrees minus 30 degrees, so it's 330 degrees. So sine of 330 degrees is also negative a half. Take a moment to try these on your calculator and you'll see that that works. Remember, the key thing to know is that when you have a unit circle and you know what the sine is of your angle or your cos is of the angle, you have two possible angles, and your unit circle will help you work that out. Your calculator will not necessarily do so. You need to know that. Now, in an exam, you're not always going to have a unit circle like this. So look for the next video, which is using your unit circle, which will show you how you get around that when you don't have a calculator, when you don't have your unit circle with you in an exam, but you have your calculator. All right, this has been the Bare Basics lesson on reading the unit circle, both when we know the angle and when we know our sine or our cos value. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me a quick email or ask me in class. And remember, the idea of these videos is to make maths just that little bit more bearable for you.